that grace, that mercy that existed outside of my immediate family that I saw and was a witness to that changed my heart. So it was completely different. I started to see the different seasons of things, like when there would be a rampant on gun violence, and it often would be younger males that are in the hospital from gun violence. But there's just so much you see in a hospital settings. I can't cover it all, but it's so much, especially working in the inner city. It sounds like you just been missing out on a lot of love right now. And it just sounds like you want to be loved. Can I give you a hug? It was a sacred moment. It was like, yo, this guy allowed me to be in his pain with him and walk with him in his pain. Feel it. Feel the sadness. Feel your chest tightening up. Feel the tears running down your face, and to the point where you can't breathe out your nose and you have to breathe out your mouth. Feel it and be in it, and don't run from it.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Guiding Light. I'm Jenna Carson,
I'm Sierra Larson.
and today we are so grateful to have our special guest, Chaplain Michael Jones, with us. Michael, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Chaplain Michael Jones is a hospital chaplain in Detroit, Michigan, and a traditional reservist serving with the 940th Air Refueling Wing at Beale Air Force Base, California. In both roles, he provides spiritual care, leadership advisement, and supports the religious needs of his communities. Michael began his Air Force journey in May 2021 with a direct commission into the chaplain candidate program, serving in that capacity while completing seminary and ministering in civilian settings. He graduated from officer training school at Maxwell Air Force Base in Montgomery, Alabama, later that same year. Michael is a servant leader, devoted husband to his wife, Janae, and proud dog dad. Known for his enthusiasm, emotional intelligence, and heart for others, Michael is passionate about people and driven by a deep commitment to embody the love of God. Michael, tell us a little bit about your call to serve as a chaplain and how that started.
Yeah, it all started like in elementary school. So I am the youngest of six, so seven of us. And I was in elementary school daydreaming about the world ending. And this is how I knew I was different from my brothers and sisters. And I go back home and I have this conversation with my mom. And she said, baby, you don't have to worry about the world ending. You won't be here when it happens. So I don't know what that means. I don't know if that was just like a sweep under the rug, not to have a difficult conversation with a child or what. But that let me know that God has set me apart from the rest of my brothers and sisters. But then it was ignored, and it wasn't until high school where I actually started to walk in the call that I feel that God has blessed me with. I was on my second high school, and I was about to get expelled, so I wasn't always a chaplain or the ideal Christian or what people would like to call it. I was about to get expelled out of high school, and it was my now godfather who took me under his wing. He had a conversation with the principal, and he said, "Hey, if you mess up again, it's on me." And he basically put his job on the line to keep me in school. And it was that unconditional love, that grace, that mercy that existed outside of my immediate family that I saw and was a witness to that changed my heart. And from that moment, I started to facilitate young men going back and forth to church. We used to play basketball, eat pizza after the service, and then we used to talk about the service and what we learned. And that went all the way up into my undergrad degree when I was in college. I was working in the youth ministry, and I was working volunteering at the high schools and middle schools for underrepresented areas. giving my time and devoting my time to them. So it all started in elementary school, but I didn't see the manifestation of it until like high school and college. And it wasn't until high school where I realized, like, oh, I feel called to serve our brothers and sisters in uniform, that put on this uniform. And it wasn't until 10 years later that that manifestation actually manifests. So now I am in the military serving our brothers that put on the uniform as a chaplain, and I'm serving the hospital as a chaplain as well. So that's where it all begun. And that's where it all started. A little brief story that was everywhere.
No, that was great. I love how you talked about serving your community. What has been some specific needs to your community that you've seen?
Yes. So being raised on the east side of Detroit, I saw a lot of violence, a lot of gang related activities. So when it came to serving my community, I said, how can I be a change in this? So when I left Detroit to study my undergrad degree, I was in Grand Rapids, and that is when the light hit, and I was like, okay, let me go back into the place where I know I needed guidance the most, and that was in high school. So I worked with the high schools for 3.5 to 4 years, offering my time during tutoring, during counseling sessions, going to hockey games, basketball games, and football games, being present in the moment where children and young adults need people the most, and actually listening to them. So that's how I started to serve my community, and it continues to go on. It's just look different as I continue to get older.
And then shifting into, because you're also a hospital chaplain, what are some things that you've seen or just things that are unique in hospital chaplaincy to the area that you serve?
Oh my goodness. Um, so when I first started my hospital chaplaincy journey, I was working in Grand Rapids, which is a smaller city than Detroit and have a different population. And when I moved to Detroit, I started working at a hospital in the city of Detroit. So this is not Metro Detroit, this is the city of Detroit. It was a culture shock to me, to some of the things that I would see as far as crimes, attitudes, behavior, and mentality. So it was completely different. I started to see the different seasons of things, like when there would be a rampant on gun violence, and it often would be younger males that are in the hospital from gun violence. And when I would always go and see them, it was this respect, it was this love, it was they treated me as though I was their big brother. So it was always come back, sit down and talk to me, just come chill, watch TV with me. And it was always you felt it it felt meaningful that they would see me in that light and they would allow me into their life to minister to them. Whether that is introducing them to a different mentality or offering them support as a chaplain, seeing how they are and where they are in their hearts as well as their mind, and seeing how their socioeconomic status will play a part in their actions or has played a part in their actions, and how that is creating an emotional boundary or baggage to their mentality. So it was very rewarding in those settings. But there's just so much you see in a hospital settings. I can't cover it all, but it's so much, especially working in the inner city. Oh man, I have so many stories. I have so many stories, but it's so much. And dealing with people, you be exposed to a lot. And you have to always keep this non-anxious and non-judgmental presence about you everywhere you go, because you never know the situation or the predicament that another person in a hospital may be in.
Yeah. Yeah, I love how you bring up that presence, non-anxious, non-judgmental. Those are things that we practice when going through chaplaincy training in
Hmm.
clinical pastoral education and different internships that we do. For the listeners who are not as familiar with these terms, or, maybe just haven't had the same experiences of visiting with a lot of people in the hospital, what are some of your takeaways for the everyday listener who thinks, how can I be more like a chaplain when I have a friend, a loved one going through illness or in the dying process or having committed a crime? What are some key takeaways? And feel free to share some stories as well from your experience that could help our
Hmm.
listeners.
Yes, I would say practice active listening. Practice, practice, practice. So often we listen to people and we start to formulate a thought of or a response that we want to say instead of letting them finish what they're saying. So I would say practice active listening as well as empathetic listening as well. People talk from an emotional place, and that emotional place can be damage, it could be heartbreak, it could be sorrow, and it's up to us to pick up on those emotions that they're speaking of and either dive deeper into them or offer them a comfort in them. But we also have to let them express themselves. I think I was sharing with Larson a story. It was a brief story. I went to visit this patient, and he was he was experiencing a mental breakdown. They said, "Oh, he's very confrontational, and he haven't had his medicine," and they just were saying all of these things about him. But to have a non-judgmental and non-anxious presence, yes, it's good to know those things, but don't let those things determine how you feel or how you think about the person you're going to see, because then that's going to affect the conversation. So I didn't let those things affect me, but I went to go and see this patient, and he began to express how betrayed he felt by his father, by his baby mother, by his mother, and he could then continue to talk to me about his traumatic life story and how broken and neglected he felt. And after listening to him speak, I acknowledged what he said, and I then addressed like, "Hey, man, it sounds like you just been missing out on a lot of love right now. And it just sounds like you want to be loved. Can I give you a hug?" And he said, and he started crying. He started crying. He said, "Man, my dad don't even give me a hug. And yet I don't even know you. And you listen to my story and you just sense that I needed a hug." And he was like, "Yes, can I have a hug?" And I hugged him. And we hugged for like 10 seconds. A lot of people may have feel uncomfortable with hugging someone for so long that they didn't know, but he just wept in my arms. My shoulder was wet from his tears, and um, just giving him and creating that space for him to be vulnerable, for him to experience love, for him to experience sadness, but still feel cared for in his sadness. It was a sacred moment. It was like, yo, this guy allowed me to be in his pain with him and walk with him in his pain. This is dope. But it's also exhausting. I'm not like it's both sides. It's very good is and it's very loving and hopeful, but then it's also emotionally draining to be present with someone for so long and to walk and experience someone's pain and emotions for so long. And you're like, yo, okay, I just need to get away. So it's also, as you're caring for people, it's also good to know your limit and also to offer care to yourself or find someone to care with you for yourself. So that's one story. Like I said, I could keep going, but I just don't want this to be me just rambling stories from the hospital.
Well, that's a very powerful story. And what's standing out to me about that story is how you stayed in the pain with him. You talk about him allowing you to walk with him in the pain. He literally wept on your shoulder. You held that hug. You were doing what we call in chaplaincy holding space for that person to feel and not needing to fix. And I think that one of the hardest things for me as a chaplain is learning over the years, learning not to come from a place of needing to fix the person's
Mm,
pain. Because, first of all, we can't do that, right? That's not on. For some of us, it's on a higher power, right? Or,
mm,
whatever one person's belief is. I think most of us could probably agree, though, that we cannot fix each other's pain. That's a very personal thing. But you were with him, holding space, holding the pain, feeling with him. So, what has enabled you to do that? Because that is a skill. You talked about taking care of yourself after providing care, but what has allowed you to be there in that room, holding space, bearing witness to pain?
listen, I have not always been like this. Being raised, being raised in Detroit, as a male, you're taught to not cry. Well, I was taught, let me speak in eyes. I was taught to not cry. I remember losing my older cousin, and I didn't feel comfortable crying in front of my brothers or in front of my pops. So I went to the basement steps in the empty house. My parents weren't there and I was alone, and I just wept because I didn't feel comfortable crying in front of anyone else because I was taught not to cry. It wasn't until I took CPE, which is clinical pastoral education. And I advise everyone that is going into the ministry to take at least one unit. It's very helpful. It wasn't until my second unit that I was able to open up. And it was my educator that created space and held space for me in those moments where I experienced racism in the hospital.
Mm,
And in those moments where I lost my grandfather and I wept for an hour and they just held that space. And I was tearful the whole hour. I couldn't talk, I couldn't do anything. And it was in those moments where I was able to go deeper within myself. I was able to uncover my ugliness and my darkness and able to sit with it. Then I knew I was able to go deeper with people as they uncover their ugliness and darkness. So I stopped being afraid of the darkness. I stopped being afraid of the ugliness. I stopped being afraid of the thought of being perfect or idealism. So that left my mind. It was like, all right, well, now let me be present. Let me allow them to shed their tears and do and express the ugly cry, right? Instead of the cute cry where just a tear drops, let them experience the ugly cry and not run from those moments or not be too quick to offer them a napkins to tell them it's time to be done crying now, but allowing them to cry until they feel they're comfortable or until they feel they're done with their tears. But it all started with someone allowing and creating that space for me. Allow. I think I had the opportunity to cry before, but I don't think someone created the space and welcomed me into it then that I started, right? I think the opportunity was always there, but it was when I noticed the space being created by someone else and was like, yeah, come on in and just express it and feel it. Feel it. Feel the sadness. Feel your chest tightening up. Feel the tears running down your face and to the point where you can't breathe out your nose and you have to breathe out your mouth. Feel it and be in it and don't run from it. So once someone welcomed me into that space and created me and let me know it was okay, then I was okay to feel it. Now I'm okay to offer that to other people as well because I've been there.
Yes, thank you. Oh man, that's so important because I don't think we give Black men spaces to do that. And, I think that and maybe not men in general, but I want it like as Black men specifically, I'm just speaking from being a part of this culture, like,
Mm,
you know, you got to be strong. You can't, got to be tough. You can't cry. You can't, what are you crying for? Like, get
mm,
over it. Let's go. You just keep pushing, stop. All of that is like this narrative that we have in our community and and the pain and suffering that comes from that mentality is not
mm.
doing us any favors. And so I love how you
Amen.
said that you were given the opportunity and the space to let it go, let that go. And now you give other people the opportunity and space to do the same. And I think and I'm kind of just speaking to my own culture at this point, but I think we need to do that, especially for Black men, especially for Black boys, just
Mm,
letting them have space to be vulnerable and feel safe doing so because it is detrimental to mental and spiritual health if we don't allow for that. And so I love that you're able to promote that from a place of healing and understanding and also allowing other people to have that as well.
thank you. Yeah, it's critical. I think it's critical to the development of mentally as well as emotionally, right? It's bringing us from a space of A to B and then to C to D instead of just holding us back at B, providing emotional intelligence. So when we are older, we're able to express in our future relationships or future endeavors how we may be feeling or what is going on in our body. What are we sensing at the moment? What about this argument made me feel this way? Or what about someone saying this term or this using this language made me react in that way? So yeah, I agree. I agree 100% with you.
One thing that, okay, so for listeners, to have some context, I am actually at basic chaplain course with Chaplain Jones. And so we're in a course together for the next couple of weeks. And I was like, I met him. I was like, I have to have him on the show. He's probably the most like bubbly, friendly, vibrant people that you will ever meet. Just we go to the lobby and I see him just chatting everybody up. Everybody's his best friend. He walks through the hall. They're like, "Oh, Chaplain Jones," just so, so vibrant. And, you know, I think like we're talking about, a lot of the things that you've seen and that you've heard and that you minister to can be really heavy, can be really difficult things. How do you stay so vibrant and bubbly and, awesome? Even though, you carry a lot of weight.
Mm.
How does that happen?
Oh, listen, God himself. Oh my goodness. It's funny you say that because I work at a level 1 trauma center. And before I came to BCC, I left the hospital and I was exposed to this lady that was stabbed and sliced to death at her work, at her job. She was the manager, and one of her employees did this to her. And that happened at 7:30 in the morning. And then I'm trying to care for, well, her family wasn't there yet, but now I'm caring for staff because staff need care too, as they're exposed to these tragic things, these devastating things. So I'm caring for staff. Then 2 hours later, I get a 1 year old that died. And these are things that are just heartbreaking. And I go to our office. If there's a shared office where all of the chaplains are. And I share with them, I say, hey, I really don't know how much longer I have in this. Like seeing traumatic thing after traumatic thing after traumatic thing, it starts to weigh on you. I'm not in it because it's comfortable. I'm in it because I feel God called me to it. And I don't want to be ignorant to the spirit and knowing that God can call me to something else based on where I am. And right now, I shared with them. I said, hey, I may have a good 10 to 15 years of working at a level 1 trauma center. And if God changed my perspective, changed my heart, and changed my mind, I'm willing to go with that. But far as to now, the way I feel now, I can't do this forever. But I say all of that to say it's a heavy load, and it's also good to know what's yours and what's not yours. And sometimes it's hard to separate the two. As far as the two examples I gave you, those going to stay with me for the rest of my life because I saw the bodies. I felt the bodies. I was there. I saw the parents crying for the 1 year old whose birthday just passed 2 days ago. I was with them. I was down on my knees weeping with them. Like those things are going to stay in my psyche. And I was with them until I couldn't be with them. But all cases won't stay with you like that. Some cases you're like, okay, I could walk with this person while I'm in this room with them as we're sharing the darkness of their life, as they're sharing the darkness of their life. I am going to help them carry this. But when I leave that room, I'm going to take it off of my shoulders and put it back on there so they could carry it themselves. I think that is one of the most important things I learned when I was in CPE, carrying it with them while I'm with them. But when I leave that room, giving it back to them so they can carry it because I have my own stuff to carry as well. So it's not like I'm just being with them and helping them carry their stuff. But now I have to go home and I have my own life, my own family, traumatic things that's going on where I have to carry it as well and process all of that. But besides knowing what's theirs and what's mine and giving it back to them when I leave the room, I enjoy spending time with my family, with my wife. I enjoy spending time with my dog. I enjoy going to the gym, going fishing. There are weeks where I go fishing 4 times a week and sometimes twice a day because it's critical for me to get away, get out, and do something that's important and that's refilling to me. Being somewhere that I can meet God, in nature, where I'm in the sun, feet in the grass, and I am just chilling. It was one time I went fishing and I didn't catch a thing. I just pulled my poles out of the water, my rods out of the water, and I just sat down and I took a nap. It was just so relaxing. It was so beautiful. And I said, you know what? I'm just going to take a nap right here. And it was so rewarding. So finding things that you find relief in, finding things that refuels you to go back and do the job again, finding things where you're able to express yourself because carrying it for them and carrying it inside of you it'll weigh you down and it'll change how you look at things. So that's how I've been able to continue to do this as well as working like a level 1 trauma center and keep coming back and back for more. And then you have those stories that make you want to come back. I was There was a trauma that came in. There was a motorcycle accident. She wasn't wearing a helmet. And it was the most blood I saw in my life. And I was talking to the resident that was on call, and he said, "Hey, just just pray for her because I don't see her making it through the night. I don't see it." She went up to surgical intensive care unit, and with prayers, I talked to the family. I walked with the family. We prayed together, and she made a whole turnaround. She is out the hospital. She is walking. She is talking. She's talking a little slower, but she's talking. And those stories was like, oh my God, thank you. And it's those stories that bring you back to, it's just those beautiful stories. And then the nurses see that, and all of the nurses want to be a part of that case. They're like, hey, do you need anything for that room? Hey, can I help you do this? Because a lot of the nurses, they see a lot of death as well, especially on the ICUs. So when they see something so bright, so vibrant, so fruitful, they like, yo, how can I be a part of this? And it's good for them and their mentality as well.
I appreciate you sharing the many different emotions that come into that work of being with people and seeing so much trauma and keeping your faith during all of that. How do you keep your faith? Do you ever question, what's going on, God? Why is all this happening?
Absolutely. I think it goes back to CPE. If you haven't take it and you're listening, take it, and you want to be in ministry, please take it. At least one unit. When I was in CPE, I had a hard time working in the NICU. A hard time. And the reason I had a hard time is because my wife and I, we were trying to conceive, we were trying to have a baby, and we weren't successful for 6+ years during that time. And it just wouldn't happen. And then it got to the point where I'm like, how can I comfort someone losing a baby when I can't even have a baby? So I'm grieving in myself. And my educator, if you take CPE, I pray you have a good educator. My educator encouraged me. They use words like, I encourage you to look into this, or I invite you to do this. So he encouraged me and invited me to see why I don't want to be on the neonatal intensive care unit. And I was like, yeah, I know why. And then he's like, all right, well, look into it a little more. And I did. Then I came back and I told him, hey, I'll go on that unit. I ended up serving that unit for 6 months. And it was one of the best units and best 6 months I have ever experienced, to the point I still go back to that unit and visit them. We exchange numbers with nurses. I performed my first funeral because the family just felt comfortable with me, and I met them in their grief, and it was like, hey, we need you. And I'm like, yo, some of the best ministry that I have done was in that moment, in the point where I felt my weakest or most vulnerable. I was able to offer ministry in that. So um yeah, that's it. That's how it happened.
Wow. So it sounds like, yeah, that pain, as you worked to look at that pain, observe it in yourself and work with God, that God transformed it into greater ability to serve.
Absolutely. That's exactly what it was.
I felt that in my chaplaincy too, and all those things that happened in my life that I didn't want, all the pain points. Somehow I seem to meet the exact people who who need who need to talk to somebody who's been through what I've been through, right? So
Yes.
amazing way of synchronicity. Yeah. Well, Michael, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure to speak with you today. Do you have any additional gems of wisdom you'd like to share with our listeners? Anything on your heart?
Oh, gems or wisdom. Yeah, I would say just be obedient to your calling and true to who you are. Um, I wasn't comfortable in chaplaincy at first because I felt like I had to ignore who I was. I felt like I had to ignore the bubbly side. So when the space was created for me to be, and this is how I say it, for me to be my whole Black self, then that is when my limits was like just off the charts. I just excelled in things when I was able to be me and I wasn't able to hide anything and I was able to say what's on my mind, what's on my heart to people. But once I was able to be me, who God called me to be, and stop worrying about what people think or what they might say, and just embrace and know that I am functioning in the will of God and I am functioning in the spirit of God as best as I can. And I am allowing space for reconciliation. That is okay with me. That is okay with me.
Thank you so much, Michael.
Thank
We
you. Thank y'all for having me.
we echo what you said. We invite all of you listening to be your full, authentic selves and understand that you have a unique calling from God, maybe many callings from God, right? Those may shift over time. I love how you talked about that, Michael, how it might change. You could be in the hospital for 10 or 15 or more years, or maybe not, but it seems that you're very confident that you will be guided to know. So, yeah.
Amen. Yes.
Yeah. We echo that. Right, Sierra? We
Absolutely. I think between Jenna and I, we've done so many different things and we're just kind of, going where God leads. And I
Mm,
love that you say that because it's so true. We think we know where we need to be and what we need to do. And, our way is not always the way. So
mm,
I love that you're willing to submit to the will of God and to do his will. So that's
mm.
awesome.
So thank you so much for your obedience and for sharing that with us. And we are sending our love to you, listeners, and hope that the rest of your day goes fantastically. And Sierra and Michael, I'm wishing you the very best as you finish up your chaplaincy course at the Air Force Training School for Chaplains. I'm Jenna Carson.
I'm Sierra Larson.
We hope you follow the peace.